Yesterday I had some of that body pain, and I'm feeling like it's a little bit similar to how it started last time in October, how I started feeling this body pain about 2 weeks before the major crisis hit, and I lost all executive functioning and went into a really bad energy place where it trickled out into all my experience. So everything that I experienced was drama, and I kind of fear that's going to happen again. Maybe some real drama will happen, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm wondering if I can create a life where not as much executive functioning is needed. The trouble is if there's drama and I get booted out of my living situation, then that could be really bad. But last night when I was feeling that sort of anxious, painful energy, I at some point laid down and put my legs up on some pillows to listen to that calming audio that I'm listening to by Peter Smith. And the anxieties turned into kind of an ecstasy. And I remember somebody telling me to just lay there and with your legs up. And maybe that's a resting position that is important. And to do that intermittently. And then also today I looked up heart math because I'm curious about what the heart is doing. And that's why I ordered that Cardia device, which I might not have needed because the heart math device seems kind of cool. It seems like it relates heartbeat to emotional state. So they say different heart rhythms correlate to different emotional states. So by doing that and doing their little exercise, we can get back into coherence and be calm. Because the Cardia will give me raw ECG data and probably tell me if I'm in atrial fibrillation, which I don't think is really a problem for me. But I wanted to capture the raw data to see if I could figure it out myself in terms of what the raw data means according to emotional states, because I'm finding the spire doesn't correlate to my subjective experience. But perhaps the heart rhythm does, and it looks like this heart math device does that. It's sort of like the Complete Coherence app that I have. Breathing in coherence is a way to get the physiology in tune, like having the heart and breath in coherence. So there could still be value in that, but this heart math device, it looks like it analyzes the heart rhythm in order to see what emotional state you're in, and then change your heart rhythm to cohere with the moment. Like if I'm safe in the moment and I'm feeling anxious, then do something to get my heart rhythm in coherence with the state now. So we'll see. It seems that I can't stop ordering these biofeedback devices and supplements and things. And I'm thinking that it is helpful because otherwise all these energies are around me, whatever that means. And then I have to process them, and there's no way to speed them up or slow them down or understand them in physiological ways. So taking the vitamins will help me to take the control stick, and then having the biofeedback devices will help me to understand what's happening at a physiological level. And then once I have the heart math, maybe taking certain vitamins changes my heart rhythm. Because I have felt that the heart is even more fundamental, because in the states where I wake up at night and my heart is going like ba-boom, 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 and I'm having these freaky experiences in mine, the heart rhythm is very, very precise in terms of a certain type of beat, and it's with that rhythm it's creating this sort of in my mind. So I think, yeah, it'll be good to see if there's any correlation there. And like I said, if I was in a beautiful place just living in a forest, maybe I wouldn't need all these 100 supplements and these million different biofeedback devices, but that's what I'm doing now. And today is Earth Day, so I'll get out for a walk later, but hopefully tomorrow will be Earth Day for me because it'll be a bit nicer, and I want to start getting outside. And I do have someone calling me about doing some work, but I'm just not sure if right now is the right time because I kind of feel like my executive functioning might be gone in a couple weeks because I'm starting to experience this body pain like I did last time. So I was thinking crisis might happen mid-June, but it might happen sooner. I think it might. And I hope it's just an inner crisis and there's not outer disaster stuff happening. It could happen that way. Just because I'm finding a little bit of bad stuff, bad information is coming towards me. But anyway, today I might see if the branched chain amino acids brings down this body pain experience, to see if this pain is related to too much dopamine. I didn't take tyrosine today when I took it yesterday, and I think I took it yesterday, or I might not have. See, I'm losing track. Either way, I slept well. I took a bunch of sleep vitamins, kind of maxed out on the initial dose, and I went to sleep. And that was good. I had a good long sleep. I think if I'm able to continue to sleep like 8, 9, 10 hours a night, then I should be okay. And I was going to return the dream sleeper. I've been talking about how I'm not sure if it's a good one. But then I found out it's not eligible for returns. So in ordering all this stuff on Amazon, I will have to look closer at the return policy. I thought anything you order, you can return. But maybe not if they're from outside sellers using the Amazon platform. So yeah, I have the HeartMath device, the Cardia device, and the oxygen saturation device coming towards me. Hopefully they won't arrive at a time when I'm not even able to use them or understand how they work anymore. If this body pain accelerates and I'm not able to tone it down with anything, maybe I will stop taking my vitamins for 3 days and do the pee test, since I am at home right now and I could potentially drop it off at the naturopath office. So there's a lot of different things to consider right now, and that's why I'm saying it's kind of like a full-time job. And I don't know, especially with these signs of executive functioning possibly disappearing, if it's a good time to pick up extra stuff. And that's why I'm wondering if I can design a lifestyle for when executive functioning disappears. Usually that lifestyle designs itself. It's eating whatever's there, not even remembering how to make food or prepare food for oneself, laying down watching Netflix, and that's it. But maybe I can make some music or go for a drive and sing, or different things that don't require executive functioning. So that's why I was talking to myself about putting some of these notes that I have on my desk right now, to-do lists, in Google Keep, because once my executive functioning goes, I won't be able to do that. And then these papers will get lost somewhere and then I'll forget what I was doing. Usually that doesn't matter so much because I'm able to just pick up from scratch again and pick up with whatever's sort of around me. That's why I like things out visible, because I can see them. And Dr. Peter Smith got back to me about our last consultation, and I was asking if it was D or L serine that's good for psychosis. And it's D serine. So I tried to order it from Amazon.com, but they don't ship to Canada. So I ordered it directly from the manufacturer website, and it was $50 with shipping, and maybe there'll be some customs. But there aren't that many supplements that are good for psychosis in particular, and Peter Smith said that's one of them. So I'm going to have it on hand and keep it as one of the possibilities to take if sort of this psychosis starts to happen, this psychosis aspect. And I am feeling like I'm definitely sped up. I've realized I was singing to Celine Dion's Ave Maria rendition. And I was singing to it, but she was always behind me in singing. So I feel that singing a song that one knows, and it's sort of a slow, beautiful song, if one's sort of singing faster, though one feels like one's slowing it down as much as possible, it's a sign that one is in a faster reality. And so that could be a way to see, like, am I sped up right now? I don't feel like I'm sped up, but if I sing this song and it's unfolding in 3D time and space, yet I'm singing faster, just a bit faster, a word or two faster maybe, then maybe I'm sped up. And I'm also wondering, when one realizes one has no boundaries, one is boundless and there's no ego self-protection, if one must live in beauty, because everything gets in. And I think I'm absorbing everything, and it's starting to be really painful. And so that pain eventually sort of collapses. And also, he said I can take the Jiao Gulan continuously or after the crisis or during. He's not quite sure. One thing I learned is that I should not take Bacopa 1 day a week, which is the same with NAC and also rhodiola. And I bought concert tickets to Deva Premal because I want to go, though maybe I'll be too out of it and not able to, because I am really starting to feel this pain. And I'm wondering if part of the difference is the lithium orotate. I've been taking that different kind, the advanced research, Hans Napier brand. And also, I don't know if I'll be able to prevent this. I was thinking it would happen later, but maybe it's not going to. Maybe because I spent more time in beauty, that this type of environment will collapse upon me sooner. And I'm not sure. When I had the crisis in October, that's when I had to start staying indoors more. So it could also be that I need to get outside more to prolong the onset of this. And I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea. And it could be good to take Jiao Gulan, curcumin, bacopa, and magnolia bark continuously. I also learned that I need to take polygallop potentially on an empty stomach. So those are some of the things I wrote down to check in about with myself. I've written a lot of other notes too that are a bit disjointed, and I've been having an insight into, oh, I should write a book. But then now, with feeling like this body pain could be a sign and a warning that executive functioning is going to disappear soon again, it's not good to start writing a book now. I won't even know what it is that I started to create. So that's why I like talking to myself on video. So maybe forgetting about that book thing and talking about some of this on video every day to catch up with it a little bit. And then designing a life not needing executive functioning, like creating music and being outside, and not putting the pressure about that executive functioning thing. There's something I have to do for work today that requires executive functioning. Then after that, after Wednesday, maybe I won't need it so much. So we'll see. So I'm going to talk about some of these insights, and it might be a little disjointed just because I have to look at it and then talk, and I don't know if I want to go back and edit, because that only produces more information or more insights. But I had an insight when I was upstairs pouring my tea water that it could be that the heart's beating faster to keep up with the demand for oxygen for this sort of sped up process. Or it could also be sped up relative to the consensus or the resonant morphic field around one. So if one's heart or one's being is attempting to resonate faster than the average resonance, then it could be beating faster in terms of relativity of consciousness, and there could be relativity in physiology as well. I think there is. I experienced that before. Like people who have frequent bowel movements or something like that, they're operating in a different time space relative. So relative to the consensus, I don't know if I want to call it consensus, I don't know what it's called. They're moving at a different speed, so their body's not processing things as well, and then they have it more often relative to the consensus because they're moving faster. I don't know. It's hard to really delineate, but I think I was talking yesterday about this a little bit, about going too far into meaning and significance and insight, and that brings one too far out of the soma, or one's mind vibration or the significance of life starts to move faster than the material body can move. Because one can imagine a beautiful place and that one is there in an instant, but if one wanted to move from where they are now to that exact beautiful place, that would take some planning, that would take time, that would take some kind of travel plans, things like that. So I think too, seeing a lot of meaning in what is here now, when the morphic resonance that is average would only allow for others to perceive that. Sometimes that also brings some kind of incoherence, even though it feels like it shouldn't necessarily do that. I don't know how that all works. And even right now with this energy I'm feeling, it's like kind of painful, and it's like this warning sign that things are going to come tumbling down. It could be a warning sign that I'm moving too fast. It could be a warning sign that there's nothing I can do to stop it, but at least there's a warning sign. It could be a warning sign that it's going to accumulate and implode upon itself. And I might think, well, I should be in a beautiful space now, and I'm not. So could be in somewhat of a danger of experiencing old patterns that I don't necessarily want to, but might be necessary. And so I was writing down that it could be interesting to design a perceptually safe space. I was reading a document that said, oh, let's create an emotionally safe space for emotions. And that's necessary, of course. But I was wondering if one can design a perceptually safe space, like a forest is very perceptually safe, except there could be animals, of course, that might attack a human being. But in terms of the visionscape, it's all sort of beautiful and depending on the weather. So even a forest isn't necessarily perceptually safe, but it's less likely perhaps to bring about old traumatic patterns. And that might not necessarily be true either, because maybe lifetimes ago or family generations ago, another family experienced some kind of trauma in a forest. So there's no real absolute here. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, but with this energy I'm feeling some kind of distress is coming, and I'm hoping that it's more like a psychosis, like imagined distress, but not really happening. Because what happened the other day was, it wasn't imagined distress. It was like distressing. It's like reading a distressing news post online or something. It was distressing for real. And I feel like maybe there could be real distress from the past, because that's sort of what I went through in October on, but it created these patterns and scenes and drama that I felt are more appropriate for family constellation meetup. So I'm hoping I can get back to another one of those. There's one on May 5th. So it'd be nice to process some of that there. And then depending on how that goes, I might go to the one in early June. So I was thinking that for my transformation plan, I am going into a perceptually safe space. Because I think a lot of what's happening in these so-called disorders of mental whatever is that one's brain is moving faster. It's able to process light, which is more light available for more information now to perceive and act based on the now, but every moment in time is contained in the now. So what can happen is that perception, even though it's seeing things now and acting on them, like this cup of tea and drinking it without thinking about it, it's just able to see it in peripheral vision and then pick it up and drink it without thinking, now I'm going to have a cup of tea, which is action based on sound and programming. Perception can extrapolate and see a lot more events of the past and possible futures because of this perception action. So that's why it can be helpful to not be around so many people during these sensitive times, because perception can extrapolate back to old periods in time, perhaps even lifetimes before, and then reenact dramas to probably bring them into awareness and see what they're doing, but I don't know what else. And then one has to sort of act that out even though one doesn't want to, which I can see is sort of related to how people might act out violence and be not aware of it or not wanting to, but feeling like they have to. But these are old patterns that, if we're still acting in those ways, but just refined somewhat, like now I'm not violent in this way, but there's still violence in other ways, then that violent energy is still going to resonate with the old violent patterns and people are going to act them out again. And, we just end up being puppets of all these generations of trauma in our DNA. I don't know why I'm saying all this. I just sort of making it up. But yeah, I don't really want to get back into that. And then if I'm not in this space with people around, it won't necessarily get acted out on. So I'm feeling like I'll be safe in this space, but maybe not. I don't know. And it also could be this energy is telling me, well, there's more stuff to process. You've gone so far one way into upper levels of consciousness that now I need to resolve some old patterns. And then so the old patterns come back to be enacted and moved through, and then everything is fine again at some point. Hopefully. So everything will be fine again at some point. I don't know, I'm feeling some kind of like premonitions right now, and I don't want to say them because they may or may not be true. This is where not believing thought or even subtle intuition can come in handy, because who knows if it's true. And it could be true in these nonlinear states. It could be something that's true in 10 or 20 years, not in 10 or 20 minutes or 10 or 20 days. We really don't know. We don't know anything other than the moment. So yeah, so the brain is more based on perception action. And since all time is now, one can perceive subtle patterns from the past and sort of get trapped in enacting them in one's life and in other people's life patterns. Like we sort of get attracted to, I think it was Dr. David Hawkins who said attractor patterns, that, I could be walking by. Actually, I had this experience when I was going to pick up medication or asking if I could get medication, if it was time for my prescription. And I was standing there waiting for the pharmacist, and then this man came up behind me and he sort of like budged in front of me, and I was like, and he just was kind of looking at me. And then I said to him, like, can I go, in like a snarky way when the person came up? And I didn't realize he had probably been standing there before and then kind of walked away and came back. But he didn't communicate that. He just kind of stood there. And I'm like, why did I even say that? And I kind of realized, and I don't want to put the blame somewhere else, but I realized that that was probably how that person creates people responding to them, is in like a snarky way to confirm their belief that everyone in the world is snarky. So sometimes we act in ways and we don't know why, and it's because we're compassionately acquiescing to how another person perceives reality and confirming that for them, unfortunately. So I don't know if that's true, but you know, I've written down like 2 sentences here and I've talked for like 10 minutes. So that's when there's all this other information that comes out of reading what I've written. And yeah, so light is fundamental, and perception, the more light, the more we can perceive, and perception can extrapolate eternity. And also, there are no boundaries. So I don't know where I begin and I don't know where I end. And then I wrote down, you never began, so you never end. That sounds kind of Alan Watts-ish, and I don't know where that came from, but this whole there's no boundaries is related to how we are totally interconnected. We're totally related. There really is no boundary, but the ego boundary is this protection that we put up. So in this transformation process and a transformational crisis, we often lose our ego boundary and we're left completely vulnerable. And we see we have no boundaries, so we're affected by all of those around us. And now I'm realizing that a so-called traumatic event of mine was actually sort of transformational in a way. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but so the thing is that when we enter into eternity and we're all one, we're alone. I've heard and I've read that before. That is not original. Most of what I say is pretty original, but this all alone equals all one is not original, that's for sure. And even though it's original, I don't mean that I thought of it myself. It's coming from somewhere else. I'm not thinking this stuff up. It's only by not having anything in my brain that something else can speak through me. And I guess it's kind of like channeling, but I don't even know if it's channeling. I think it could be more that at a higher resonance, one is able to access different words, a different form of communication altogether. Recently, I watched the video of a housewife on LSD. The experiments they did is so funny because at one point, the experimenter asked her something and she's like, it would be all one if you weren't here. And then she's like, no, it has nothing to do with you. I am one. And that's sort of where I'm at in processing right now. It's like, am I one? Am I all one? It doesn't matter who's around. I don't know. So what I'm trying to say though is we need to put up these artificial boundaries. Meaning we know there are no boundaries, but we can put up some artificial ones. And how can we do that? Well, some of it is by changing our physiology. So I have no boundaries. Things passively hit me, like whatever information comes to me, and I can't stop it from coming to me and seeing it or feeling it. And it accumulates and it builds up this stress. But then I can take some physiological things like supplements to mitigate some of that. So it's not really setting up a boundary, but it is in terms of it's saying, okay, now I've had too much information overload. I'm going to take these vitamins and supplements to transmute or translate or reduce or mitigate some of that, knowing that I have no boundaries. So in a way, it sets up a boundary and then it's saying, okay, enough. My body can only process so much. I need to take something to neutralize that. And the thing is, and I have a lot more to talk about with that, is that if we don't do that, if we don't learn to set up these artificial boundaries or lack of boundary neutralizers, realizing that we're interconnected, it's all one, and then still being in situations where one doesn't necessarily want to be one with that, but one is, because one is there, but one would like to move towards something that is easier to be one with, in that there's not so much needing to take stuff to neutralize this. So if we had a lifestyle design that was ideal for our human physiology, didn't have all this information overload of media and bright advertising everywhere, people that realize there are no boundaries are feeling the direct impact of that consciously, whereas others are only feeling it subconsciously, and they don't know why they're doing certain things, like maybe having addictions to certain things to cope with this. Then they think, oh, I have an addiction, but really it's trying to cope with this life that we've created that we're not able to cope with. It's not how we're designed. So people that realize there are no boundaries, there is no self, there's no separate entity there. The trouble is, when we connect with that, we get these professionals giving us pills that help us create these artificial boundaries. And then we don't know that's what is happening. But they're helping us to reestablish boundaries. But not really, because it's only a chemical boundary. It's not really going to help ultimately, because what it does is it blocks the conscious awareness of this pain, of too much information, a lifestyle that is not designed for human physiology, which anyone can test with certain biofeedback devices, maybe like Spire, Muse, perhaps this HeartMath device that I ordered. So it basically blocks that information getting to conscious awareness. But then it doesn't block it ultimately, because it's still there subconsciously. The brain can still process that. And I heard in that documentary, The Solar Revolution, that tranquilizers only allow the most prevalent information to get through to consciousness. So the other information is still getting through to the subconscious or the unconscious or whatever, but it's just not coming up into consciousness. But it's still piling up into the subconscious, where eventually that pile up of stress and information overload and sensitivities and PTSD, the amount that the medication can block reaches a critical point where it implodes, because it can no longer block that accumulation of stuff. So the pills give us these artificial boundaries, and then hence people need med changes to sort of give us a different tranquilizer, because the body is sort of adapted to that as a barrier. It's almost like if we're taking a certain medication or pill for a long period of time, the subconscious is trying to find ways to eventually break through that, to show us what we're not seeing again. And it's almost like how bacteria and viruses eventually adapt and get smarter. Well, the subconscious does too. And so it eventually breaks through that artificial boundary, and then we have to take some other pills. So then the subconscious has to sort of relearn how to accumulate it. Plus, during the time of crisis where we're trying to get onto another pill or something, we are processing and aware of so much of that stuff that does spill over. So it spills over, but then eventually, then we say, oh, well, the meds aren't working, when really it just spilled over. And then the spilling over process takes a certain amount of time, and then by the time a quote pill starts working again, really it's just that enough of it poured out that it's sort of evened out into a lake where we can put up another barrier again, so it eventually overflows into conscious awareness. So these pills possibly don't really help that much anyway, except that they create the artificial barrier and allow it to build up, so we can kind of go on sort of functioning for the time being. But then eventually it overflows and we're totally non-functional. So the other opposite would be maybe not taking the meds, being so sensitive that we can't really function in society at all. But maybe that would allow us to learn how to create a world for ourselves that does work for us, because we're sensitive and we can test what is helping and what's not. So maybe I'll do a trial at some point when I'm not on quetiapine. I'm like, well, what does my heart look like when I'm doing XYZ? And maybe the quetiapine is helping me do XYZ, but maybe I don't have to do XYZ. Maybe I can do something completely different if I listen to my heart. So these are the types of experiments that I'm looking forward to doing, and this whole idea of artificial boundaries, like knowing there's no boundary, knowing that things are going to get to me and accumulate, and a pill might temporarily prevent it from coming into conscious awareness, but it is going to build up and overflow. Well, I don't know what to do with that. I might have to get away on a short trip right now. I don't know. I need to think this through. And I'm going to stop now and talk on a different video.